So the history of video games is closely tied to the history of warfare and simulation of warfare, going back to the 19th century, Kriegspiel, war board games for instance, including sometimes for the actual training in weapon systems or in military uses. So at the Strong we have possibly the first military use of a video game for training purposes. This was created by Ralph Baer. It's an actual light anti-tank weapon. Now Ralph Baer is sometimes referred to as the father of video games because he patented the idea of playing a video game while he was working at Sanders, which was a defense contractor in New Hampshire. And Ralph had been working to develop advanced systems for reading optical sensors, so better light guns effectively. And they developed one that could read more precisely than the original light guns movement. They would read the scan lines, the 250 or so scan lines on the television. They could also detect horizontal movement. And so it allowed you to be precise in your aiming and your targeting. And so they said, hey, this is a perfect application for defense purposes. And so they took this light anti-tank weapon, 1979, they modified it, and they created essentially B-roll, VHS tape of Russian tanks going across the landscape, which they mapped on the coordinates so the computer could recognize where a tank was. Then you picked up this light anti-tank weapon, you'd aim it at the screen, and you'd fire at the tank, and then the simulated explosion would happen. It worked amazingly well. They had a giant projection TV, and so they bundled this up. It was hooked up to an Apple II computer and brought it down to DC. Or more precisely to Virginia, to the Pentagon, and they began to demonstrate it. Before long, they found themselves in the office of the Undersecretary of the U.S. Army with a 2-star general with this on his shoulder firing, and allowed Sanders to win a contract for these sort of training devices. This prototype of Ralph's light anti-tank weapon, and this is the only one in existence that I know of. So Ralph donated this to the museum. He brought it out himself. I remember when he brought it out. I believe this is the one that the 2-star general would have held and the Undersecretary of the Army would have been impressed by. So it's neat to have these artifacts here to allow us to tell these sort of stories. You know, Ralph Baer had worked in the Army. I mean, he was someone who, first of all, his own personal experience was someone who left Germany in the 1930s, escaped Nazi Germany, came to America, served in the Army, and was extremely patriotic. Now he also was in charge of a large division at Sanders, which was a major military contractor, so it also was important for his job to be doing this as well. But it's not something I think he lost any sleep over. In fact, he would see it as helping the defender of liberty and democracy survive. So Ralph was working on video games, he was working on defense contracts, and he was creating consumer toys like Simon. He was an incredible man who just had this almost infinite capacity for invention and creativity. I think knowing the sort of person that Ralph was makes it, to me, in some ways more meaningful, knowing that he in himself had to balance all these different beliefs and the belief in freedom with this pure love of inventing and making things and playing, all wrapped up in one artifact.